do we, just look at their objective in isolation, perhaps ignoring what's going on the home front, so to speak? And then, how fair is that? Because, admittedly, looking at the Kriegsmarine in isolation is easier because obviously most of the war against Germany was going on land, at least in the Western Front, albeit the Kriegsmarine does have some influence that, trying to stop the D-Day landing, so this is that example. Whereas Italy, it's perhaps half and half. You do have the campaign in the desert and the campaign in mainland Italy, but you can go from the desert of Africa to mainland Italy via Sicily using naval power. And then, of course, with Japan, most of the war is a naval war with battles on islands as the navies, tussle and fight, and therefore one side or the other gets access to particular islands to try and invade and support. Although I do like this idea, at least based on, British-style school report cards, at least in the period that I did them. So maybe at some point in the future I'll come up with a whole set of, again, British school cards, that's what I know, style report cards, maybe based on per year each navy, and see if people want some copies of those. If we're going to go and say, okay, we're going to just give a single grade for the entire war for each navy. Okay. This is probably going to be a little bit controversial for each one, to be honest, but I will try and explain brief my reasoning for each. The US Navy, which this might come as a bit of a shock to some people, I would give it a B+-A-, verging more maybe to B+. I would not give it a straight A, simply because whilst, yes, towards the end of its World War II, the US Navy with this massive juggernaut was just pulverising the Japanese Navy left, right and centre, the simple fact is that, as a number of US admirals at the time noted, the US Navy, despite having, most of the rest of World War II going on for a couple of years before Pearl Harbor, fundamentally was not ready for war on December 7th, 1941. And I'm not just talking about the fact that Pearl Harbor itself was not ready, as was demonstrated by a whole range of things, from flight control direction to anti-aircraft fire to night fighting tactics to the efficiency of carrier launches to a whole laundry list of other things, or actually perhaps the lack of things. The US Navy in late 41, early mid 42, and arguably even towards the end of 42 in some respects, was very lacking. So a report card for the US Navy in 1942 would mostly be very negative, with a few bright spots, like Midway, not an important one, but still. But even then, when you break Midway down, there's a lot of stuff to criticise, there's a lot of stuff to praise. And then, of course, things get better and better as people figure out tactics, technology improves, numbers improve, etc., etc. So, as an overall score, it would be, as a B+A-, and kind of the teacher's note at the bottom would be something like, started off pretty poorly, wasn't really paying attention, but began to learn very quickly and soon came to dominate the rest of their classmates. So yeah, good future prospects, but needs to be quick on the uptake. The Royal Navy, I'm also round about the same boat, probably again it's a B+A-, trending maybe towards a B+, mostly on the grounds that, well, the two big negatives that would drag it down is, firstly, the somewhat comically, hilariously terrible incidents and tactics in the early part of the war, like using a fleet carrier with two destroyers to try and hunt submarines. Shockingly enough, the submarines won that round, and they're down with HMS Courageous. And the other big one, of course, would be, yes, well done, you tried to fight everybody on the planet, which is a very British thing to do, but with a navy that was nowhere near ready or prepared enough in terms of numbers and size. Now, by circumstance and design, ended up fighting a war that was even more widespread than the one they fought in the First World War, with a navy that was significantly smaller than the one that they fought the First World War with, and the First World War stretched the Grand Fleet and Company to the max. And as a result, a lot of stuff that happened that was pretty bad for the Royal Navy, said, for example, but a whole list of other things, can to a certain degree be traced back to, you were trying to penny packet fight a global war. So again, the teacher's note on that would be strong overall results, but tries to do far too many things at once and had some very strange ideas about how to start its projects. The Italian Navy I'm going to give a C+. There's a lot of things to be said positively about individual elements of the Italian Navy, but in the early to mid part of the war, their upper echelons of leadership were lacking. Their tactics and coordination, both generally and particularly with the Regia Aeronautica, were pretty terrible. And ultimately, what were their objectives?